Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, this is Vocal Arts with Peter Barber. Just recently I had the great pleasure of chatting with Lisette Oropesa, who is a world famous superstar opera singer and a wonderful human being. She has a huge audience on social media, so we talked a lot about that, a lot about the pros and cons of that, how you kind of want to structure your presence on social media, just based on your personal preferences. What it's like to be an opera star, essentially. What it's like to be traveling all the time and performing in the world's greatest opera houses like this one here, the Metropolitan Opera, one of the greatest houses in the world where Lisette is a regular. We talk about fitness, we talk about health, we talk about psychology and the pressures of being a singer from the young artist level all the way up to being a star. It was a really interesting, cool, and fun conversation, but we did get pretty serious at times. I know you guys are gonna love it, so please welcome the wonderful Lisette Oropesa.
Okay.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on the various streaming platforms for the podcast. Today we are here with Lisette Oropesa, and I'm actually going to pass it over to her to give a little elevator pitch as to who she is and what she does for a living.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Lisette Oropesa. I'm an operatic soprano, and I have been singing all over the world for the past almost 20 years. And I'm really looking forward to sharing little tidbits about my life with you all and the challenges that come with this work, and also the joys and the good things about it.
Amazing. We are excited to hear about all of that. I actually want to wind it back and just get like an overview of your background and your actual training, like kind of when you discovered opera and then where you did your undergrad and so on.
Yeah, so I'm really blessed that my mom was an opera singer, was trained as an opera singer. Everybody in my family sings for generations, actually. And so I have a bit of an advantage in that I kind of grew up hearing music, classical music all the time. My mom also is a beautiful pianist. And I played piano by ear and stuff, and I would imitate my mom. I would try to sing like her, making fun of her, actually. And I grew up playing flute. And I did that for many years. And then when I went to college, I did an audition for the flute faculty, but my mom kind of convinced me to do a voice audition just with my natural voice because I had been singing in church, I'd been singing at home, I was imitating my mom, I had developed my voice to an extent. And I sang for them O mio bambino caro, which is a really lovely young soprano aria. And they said, oh no, you have to sing. You have to study singing, no question. You absolutely have a gift. And your mom obviously has been kind of guiding you all throughout your life. And so I started to study voice. And I didn't give up the flute right away. Like I took some time to really do both, but eventually I had to choose one over the other. And I ended up choosing to sing because I mean, really, I fell in love with the art form. It's a really amazing, all-encompassing thing because it's performance, it's language, it's drama, it's acting, it's it's everything. It's really incredible. So yeah, that's kind of how I got my start. I went to university in Louisiana State University, and I did the Met competition, and I won the Met competition when I was just about to graduate from my undergrad, and they invited me to New York to join the Young Artist program there, the Lindemann program, which is a 3-year postgraduate, if you will, training program, all intensive, right at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. And of course, I was not going to say no to that. So I moved to New York right after college, and that's how I started.
That is wild. So you went from basically planning to be some kind of flute performance or studying the flute to the Lindemann program in 4 years, essentially.
Yeah, but that's why I say I had an advantage. My mom was a singer. So I had been listening to really great singing for a long time. It wasn't like I woke up at 18 and decided to become an opera singer. I had had this in my life, my whole life. I just didn't study it formally until college. But, singers, I was given a big opportunity at a very young age. I know that that's very rare. I know that's very special, very unique, but I had to make some changes early on in my professional life so that I could continue to progress. And that's something, if you want, we can talk about it. because every singer has that. You might have a chance of one opportunity where, oh my God, all the doors open for you, but you really have to go through the doors yourself and you have to bring everything to the table. Otherwise, those opportunities can get shut down really quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, well, that's great that you grew up in a household setting where it was kind of baked in by the time you kind of got ready to do the thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was really helpful, which is amazing. So yeah, so as you were just saying, what are some of those challenges you faced kind of going into the spotlight as a relatively young singer?
Yeah. Well, before I address the challenges, I want to say another advantage that I had, which is that I'm bilingual because my family's Hispanic. My family's from Cuba. So I also grew up speaking Spanish. So this gave me an advantage when I went to school, to university, that I picked up Italian very quickly. I picked up French very quickly because I grew up in Louisiana. We took French class. I was interested in the French language. I picked it up faster. I know that advantage of having played flute, studied an instrument for many years, having a mom who sang and introduced me to music very young, having a language background, all gave me things that I could fall back on as advantages. They were skill sets that I already had honed to a certain extent by the time I got to college. Now, what are the challenges? What were the problems? What were the barriers? The first barrier was I was very young. I was 21. So I hadn't had performance experience outside of college. I hadn't had any kind of theatrical training outside of college. I hadn't grown up in musical theater. I hadn't done a ton of plays in school. I was in band because I played flute. So I didn't do I hadn't been in scenes and things like that, anything outside of university. So I didn't have a lot of stage experience. I was quite green. So that was one of my challenges. Another one of my challenges was that I was very overweight. And for my voice type, one of the things that was often criticized at that time about me was, your weight is going to be a problem to your career. Yeah, that was another issue that I had. And I was just overall an unhealthy, not a very healthy person. It wasn't just that I was overweight. I didn't have a good diet. I didn't have an exercise regimen. All of that I had to work through and change so that I could become a healthier singer, so that I could become a better singer, because a voice is right here in your body. It's not something you pull out of a box or a case and put together. It doesn't matter if you have a cold or not. You have to be in good health in order to sing, in order to do anything on stage. Yeah. So that was something I really had to take into account, under control.
Fantastic. And was this feedback from the opera world? Because now you are a big advocate for fitness and health, and very well known as someone who is invested in fitness and health. Was it those early comments that kind of inspired you to take control of that part of your life?
It was a big part of it, Peter, because at the time, this would be early 2000s. This is before HD. Before HD, a lot of people like to say, oh, the obsession with beauty and people being camera ready and opera started in, 2010 and early 2000, early first decade of the 2000s because of HD. But I was being given this feedback from the late 90s and in early 2000s, when I was still in university, I was being given this feedback before the Met began their HD stuff. So because opera has been broadcast for decades, it's not like a new thing. Now I was getting this feedback from doctors who would say, oh, you're really young, you really shouldn't be overweight because it's going to give you problems with your liver, it's going to give you problems with female issues, it's going to give you problems with your blood sugar, it's going to give you problems with your heart. You have to get your diet under control and your health under control. So this is feedback that I had been getting from everybody, from well-meaning friends to my own family to doctors to, of course, directors and people I was auditioning for from even when I was in college. I remember specifically a very hurtful comment that I had gotten from someone that we had to sing for in college. And I sang a wonderful audition for him. And it was like a mock audition thing. And he completely shut me down. He basically was like, I have no compliments for you. I'm going to burst your bubble. Are you ready to hear what I'm going to say? And I was like, and he just said, you need to lose weight. just like that. It was so horrible.
Wow.
I was like, and he was like, I hope I didn't burst your bubble, but honestly, he's like, you can't sing this repertoire looking like that. I can't even sing repertoire. My voice is correct for if I don't lose 30 pounds. And he was yelling at it. And I was just remember being so hurt by the way it was delivered rather than the content. Like you can tell a singer, you know, now your health is very important and your voice and your body are linked and your diet affects how you sing and how you feel and all these things. You can go about it that way, but he didn't do that. He was just a complete jerk about it. And so, and he wasn't the first or the last to give me feedback like that, you know? So I think that was really the hardest thing about it. So yes, I'm an advocate for health and fitness now because it was my journey. And, you know, I don't think that I go around trying to tell people you need to be thin in order to sing, because that's certainly not true. We know that. But all I try to tell people is that this is feedback I got 20 years ago. It's made a huge difference in my life. I'm a healthier and happier singer. But everybody just needs to find their health balance, their work health life balance, whatever way they can.
Yeah.
I really do believe that.
Totally agreed. So what does your fitness routine look like these days? I'm sure it's a major challenge to have any kind of consistency when you're literally traveling all over the world. I'm also someone who has very much been big in fitness for a long time. It's what I was
see that.
Thank you.
I can see that. Yeah.
It's what I was doing long before I cared about singing. It was all about sports before I got to college and started singing. So how have you kind of approached your fitness routine, and what do you kind of aim for when you're on the road? Do you aim for the hotel gyms? Do you just try to do like body weight calisthenic kind of stuff, and then you weight train when you can find, you know, the requisite resistance equipment? How do you approach that whole thing? Because that's something, you know, if I'm going to keep going into the operatic career, fitness is something that's always going to be a huge part of my life, and I want to get your take on it because you've been on the front lines.
Well, actually, I'd love to hear about your routine, Peter, if you wouldn't mind sharing, because it looks like you're someone that spends a lot of time lifting weights.
I did.
Yeah. Do you feel that affects you?
It did for a long time. I think at this point, I have figured out how to really know how to use the muscles of the diaphragm in the gym, which is one way, and then use them a totally different way when you're singing. And that took a long time, but I do feel confident in it now. I also do a lot of stretching. Like every day I'm stretching my neck and trapezius and all my laryngeal muscles and my tongue multiple times a day. Before I go to bed, when I wake up, before I have a practice session, after a practice session. So this all, no matter what's going on in the rest of my, you know, the larger skeletal muscles, this always feels relaxed. And it's amazing. Actually, what I've noticed is just, you know, if I start a practice session and I'm singing and it feels tight, if I take 5-10 minutes and just do a full stretch, everything, the voice is like radically different and freer and more resonant, and everything's easier. So that's been my solution, is kind of learning how to use the muscles differently, and then being sure to stretch all the time.
Wow. So are you calisthenics, weight training? Is that your primary, like an indoor kind of activity person, or are you more of an outdoor activity person?
I love both. I would hopefully, when it cools down a little in Phoenix, I can get outside a little bit more. Now when it's 115 degrees.
Oh my God, I know.
But yeah, I mean, lifting has been my primary thing since I was a freshman in college. In high school, it was much more sports oriented. But as soon as the competitive sports part of my life ended, I was like, time to get big. And so just started lifting a lot, eating a lot, and put on like pretty much all the size I have now in those first 3 to 5 years of training. And now I've dialed it back some because other priorities have taken place. I'm no longer lifting 2 hours a day, every day of the week. That's just, I have other focuses now, you know? But but resistance training with weights still is my primary form of exercise.
Bravo, bravo. I'm really curious about this, Peter, because the reason I ask is because I have a feeling that my exercise regimen is quite different from yours. But what I think is interesting for all singers is that everybody has to find what works for them, what they have time for, what they're interested in doing, what they
Yeah.
can find themselves doing consistently. You
Hmm.
know, when I lived in New York and I had a gym in my building, I would go down to the gym several times a week because it was there and it was very convenient for me to go down. I had no excuse to not go. So I would go to the gym and I weight trained absolutely because I know in my heart consistently weight training is what gives you the most bang for your buck
Mm-hmm.
overall when it comes to anything at all. If you really had to choose between a lifetime of cardio and a lifetime of weight training is going to win in so many ways. Now, but cardio, and a lot of people can say what they want about cardio. Because I run, and that's my primary form of exercise, and it's outdoors. I don't do it on the treadmill. If I can avoid it, I don't do it on the treadmill. uh, Cardiovascular fitness is what takes over the majority of my fitness time because I don't always have access to a gym. I'm usually going from place to place. It doesn't require any equipment. It's free. It's outside. I like nature. I try to find a time of day where I can go anytime I want. I don't have to worry about, oh, the gym closes at 8 on Sunday. I don't have to deal with that. Now, I do believe that the results that each of us is going to get on our exercise is going to be different, isn't it? Like, so you might have to deal more with, you need to stretch because you're using your upper body a lot and you have to really focus on form and things like that. Running too, I mean, you have to focus on form. You can't just run like an idiot. I mean,
Flail
honestly,
about. Yeah.
yeah, I run like an idiot all the time. I know, but especially because I really enjoy distance. I like
Mm,
going for long mileage, but sometimes I just can't. I don't have the time. I don't have um, the place, the energy. Sometimes, I mean,
yeah.
because I'm traveling so much. So I really feel like the important thing for me that I try to maintain that's consistent is that I get outside almost every day of the week if I can manage it. Even if it's cold, even if it's hot, even if it's rainy, I try not to let things shut me down and make excuses for me because I know if you only go out run when it's nice and
Mhm.
when it's pretty and when it's the right temperature, you'll never go. You have to you gotta go and just make it work. And if you wear the right clothes, that's the thing. My suitcase is 90% running clothes. It's really funny. Like for everything, the windbreakers, the right socks, the right hats. You have to have all that stuff. Otherwise, you're always going to have an excuse not to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's also made me stronger because it's made me more tolerant of
Mhm.
discomfort,
At
you
some
know?
point, it no longer really becomes a choice. It's just part of your routine. That's how I felt about training is like if I have a day and I'm fully recovered and I'm doing a fitness program, it's not like, am I gonna go to I'm going to the gym or I'm going to work out. It's just going to happen. And
Yes.
fortunately, it's something I love. I mean, like you talked about earlier, you have to find something you can get fired up about, whether it's
Excuse me.
running or whether it's playing
Yes.
recreational basketball or whatever. For me, it's always been, well, it was track in high school. I actually loved track, ran short to middle distance
Oh, wow.
was my specialty. And then when that was done, it was like lifting. Really enjoy lifting, put the headphones on, put the phone on airplane or whatever, and just like be in the zone
Yeah.
for like an hour and focusing on it's another like great mindfulness thing to just be in the gym,
Yeah.
just like really diligently focusing on form and controlling the tempo of everything. So I find it's half like a mindfulness meditation exercise
Yes.
and half like a physical exercise.
Yeah, I feel the
I
same way. I think it's total mindfulness meditation, movement meditation exercise. I don't listen to music. I used to. At very first, when I was first getting into it, because I am an awful runner. I'm just a stubborn runner, but I'm not actually a good one. I'm just consistent, but I'm terrible. And when I first started and didn't have the fitness to even go, 5 minutes without stopping, I had to use music to help me find a rhythm of some kind. But eventually I let that go and I don't listen to music because I really, same way that you do, where you focus on the movement and your body and being present at that time is just, there's no replacement for it. Really, it's absolutely amazing. I wouldn't give it up for anything, you
yeah,
know?
I would love to piggyback off that about being present and being mindful.
Yeah.
in the career of opera,
Mhm.
in myself and every young singer I know, there is like the chasing the carrot kind of aspect where you're looking for the bigger gig and you're trying to get into the right young artist programs and all this. And I'm grateful that I found meditation a long time ago. So I find that I'm able to be present more often than most people.
Mhm.
But opera, with this way of you're always trying to level up, you're trying to win the competition. I have seen in colleagues of mine that it's difficult for them to just be grateful for the opportunities they have now and be happy with the development, while also, of course, chasing those goals. And I'm wondering how you've dealt with that as you have leveled up to the highest stage in opera at this point, performing in all the major opera houses.
Um, I think that's a really wonderful question, Peter, and something wonderful to think about because in being, I think when you meditate and when you work on, you know, breath work and all the things that you discover when you're being present and mindful, and you kind of learn to let go of ego and things like that. Like when I actually did yoga for many years, I haven't stepped foot in a yoga studio in a long time, actually since the pandemic, and I haven't just gone back. But I practice yoga. The ideas of yoga that I hold on to all the time, which are about this being present and letting go of ego, not trying to feel like, oh, not comparing yourself to, oh, I can't do the pose as beautifully as this person can, or I don't have the flexibility that that one does, or because that's what you find yourself doing in a yoga studio sometimes, and even in a gym. I think that actually deters people from going to the gym, especially beginners, because they're embarrassed that they're not as fit or beautiful or toned or whatever as fast as another person. It's the same thing that deters people from running a race. Well, I feel bad because I'm in the middle of the pack or I'm in the back of the pack. And that's a very, and so I think one thing that you're talking about in meditation and probably in your mindfulness work that you work on letting go of is that ego that pulls you back from acknowledging where you are at the time and being able to then move forward. I think there's a balance in any person who's seeking success. There has to be a balance between knowing where you are and being honest with yourself and having the ambition and accepting that you have the ambition uh, to move forward and to grow and become your best self, because there's no reason why you should feel like an arrogant jerk for wanting to succeed. Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like
Yeah,
there's this
definitely.
balance there. Like you can be an arrogant jerk. You can also be a humble jerk or a humble, you can also be
The humble brag, yeah.
the humble brag and never get anywhere. Because I mean, in all truth, you use the word competition. And you're right. It is a very competitive business. And this is why people compare themselves to each other. But the problem is that you literally, Peter, you can't compare yourself with anyone. There's no other singer that's exactly like you. No other singer that will bring the same exact things that you bring to the table. So what can you do? You can work on making your product, what you present, because it is a product. If we look at it in a business way, your output, your artistic output, to make that as good as possible, make it as appealing as possible. It's the reason why I had to lose weight. One of the reasons why I had to lose weight, not just for my health, but also because my product wasn't going to be as valuable as someone else's product who might have a similar voice type. And I didn't want to be shut down, overlooked, and not even given a chance because I didn't match all of these certain factors that many other sopranos my age who were singing my repertoire had. Now, is it unfair? Of course it's unfair. I mean, but it's also the reality of the business. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's very easy to get sucked into the negative aspects of it, if you will, because you are always looking around and going, wow, why does this person have this gig? And how did that person land that program? And how did she get this role? And how did so and so win? How did they beat me? And you start to really quickly become combative. And I can't sit here and say, oh, just don't do that. Just don't think about everything. Just don't focus on everybody else. It's very easy to say that. But it's very difficult to do that truly and not beat up on yourself and start to think, well, I'm just terrible. Maybe I'm just no good. Maybe I'm just not a good singer. But you also don't want to be delusional and be like, I'm perfect. They just don't get me. You can't be that attitude either. You have to
Yeah.
find the truth somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a perfect segue into social media actually, because
Yeah.
social media can certainly emphasize and amplify the comparison, especially when so many people on social media. And I guess, I mean, for good reason, it's kind of how the app is used. It's more like a highlight reel of your life. It's not day to day. You're not live streaming all the time,
Right.
everything you're doing.
Right.
You want to show a cool kind of manicured look, but that certainly plays into someone sitting here on their phone. They're already comparing themselves, and then they see Jenny just won this competition. Oh, I didn't even get into that competition. I'm terrible. And it's even worse when it's just you and your phone. You don't even have people around.
Support.
One of the really tough parts about social media. So you're big on
Mhm.
social media. I've been involved in social media for a long time. I think it can be used in a good way if you know how to kind of interface with it, but it can also be terribly unhealthy for some people. So how do you approach your social media, and how have you do you think you've been able to find a healthy balance where you are on there and you're presenting your life to people in a relatively authentic way, and you don't find yourself comparing too much? Like how do you interface with all that? I mean, I would say especially Instagram. I feel like that's where you're most present.
Yeah, I certainly do have a wonderfully large following on Instagram, and I think that that's the one that I interact with the most frequently. I think it's the easiest for me. Facebook, we actually link our. My husband helps me a lot, by the way. My husband Stephen is brilliant, and he really is the one that manages the majority of our social media output. But we do everything ourselves. We don't hire out for any of that work. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of singers do need to hire out because it does take a lot of time, a lot of
Mm.
planning, especially if you want to actively comment and respond to people. It takes time. You can't just sit down and do it in 5 minutes. It really does, as you know, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
So it can become a bit of a burden if you've got other things taking up your time. If you're trying to learn music and maybe you've got children, or maybe you've got a family you have to look after, you need to be present for. You can't just be on your phone 8 hours a day. It's not possible. And it's also, as you said, there's an aspect to it that is risky to our mental health if you look at it in that way, in seeing your friends posts and your colleagues posts and go wow, and you start to compare yourself. That happens very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, how do I maintain a healthy balance with it? Number one, as you said, authenticity. Yes, I'm not afraid to post pictures of myself with no makeup on. I'm not afraid to post pictures of myself not looking glamorous. I post a very honest, I try to share a very honest balance of my professional life and my health and fitness life. But I know, and I recognize that I don't want to confuse people with messaging, because social media is messaging. It's a narrative you're creating for your brand. If you want to be super business and marketing about it, this is what you want what people will see about you and will understand about you, what you do and how you spend your time, and what you value and what's important to you. And so I also know that me posting pictures that don't engage people, that might mean something to me, but don't mean something to other people, doesn't really help my brand. So I don't post, and Stephen is very clear about this sometimes. Like, I'm not going to sit and post 9 landscape pictures, even though I travel and I see beautiful landscapes and I love to hike. If I'm going to post a landscape picture, you're going to see me in it, because you're going to see my relationship to this landscape rather than just me posting a picture of my breakfast. Everybody knows I'm vegan. Everybody knows I eat a plant-based diet. Do I post pictures of my breakfast every single day? No, because I'm not a vegan lifestyle blogger. But if I were,
Mm-hmm.
that would be my brand, and that's what I would post. Now, I do post pictures of my food frequently. If I see a restaurant, if we go to a restaurant that's vegan and we promote the restaurant by posting about them and tagging them and saying this food was great, because I want to help the restaurant and because I want my friends who are seeking a vegan alternative to know that this restaurant is there. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, I
Yeah.
use my social media in that way of, I know that it's a platform for promoting certain things. I try very hard, and this is difficult, Peter. I try very hard not to get too personal, political,
Mm-hmm.
religious, preachy, any kind of thing that is extremely easy to take out of context and put that on social media. Because once again, I'm not my social media, I think 99% is for people looking for a professional link of mine of some kind of way. They want to find a performance. They want to know where I'm singing. They don't care about my political beliefs. That's not why they're seeking me out. Now, if I were an actor or a huge celebrity, that might be different, but I'm not a big celebrity. So I don't feel like the need to use my social media as a platform to promote anything in particular that is a social movement or a political movement. However, I know that it's also, you can't just stay silent on big issues. You really can't.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, a lot of singers will use their platforms to talk about issues, to bring things to light, to talk about controversies. I think about Jamie Barton, for example. She used her Twitter a lot to bring forward issues, social issues that she felt very passionately about. And that kind of became her Twitter brand, because that's what Jamie used her Twitter for. And Twitter is a messaging app. Did she promote her performances? Sure. But she used Twitter more than anything, I thought, for a while there to really make strong statements about very specific things that were important to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect her tremendously for that. I haven't found, I have not used my social media for that. At least not in any way that I would say is really a big portion of it, because I feel like it's private for me.
Yeah, there's a very fine line there as far as how much you want to share on any of those topics. Because it's if you go over that line, then you'll immediately alienate people who disagree with you on such charged topics. So that's kind of that's kind of like the main risk there, is if the overwhelming majority are going to want to follow you because of your career as an opera singer, and you don't want to eliminate all those fans because you have different religious beliefs than them, which is a silly thing. It's silly. It's wild that we do live in a world where these subjects are that charged and we can't just all get along and be like, you believe this and I believe this, and that's great.
Right.
But it's gotten so charged more and more and more recently.
Yeah.
That it's like pressing the big red button every time you share about something like that. So you really have to toe that line, unless you just want to fully commit and just be like,
be outspoken about something.
Be outspoken about it.
Yeah. And I think that it's great to do that. I feel like it's important if that's, like I said, I can think of many singers that use social media as an opportunity to make a statement about any topic that they feel close to. Ryan McKinney does it. Joyce DiDonato does it. And there are a lot of singers that do this. And it's wonderful. I think it's fantastic. It's brave. It takes a lot of guts to really go there and use your social media for that purpose, because that is a tool to spread awareness about whatever issue it is that you want to talk about. As you said, it does alienate people. That's very true, particularly if you're a singer that maybe already has a controversy associated with them. It may alienate people. My bigger fear, more than people being alienated, because every one of us has people that hates us, but my bigger fear is that 99% of the issues that I feel like are worth talking about on social media are not that simple to just make a post about, and that's where you stand and that's the end of it. 99% of the issues that we have are issues that require dialogue, issues that require more information, more context, more understanding, more questions. I'm not qualified to make a statement on something that I'm not an expert on. I'm a social issue. I can have an opinion on a social issue, but even social issues a lot of times can be case by case. A lot of times. Now, of course, I have my general stances. And I think in real life, I'd much rather have conversations about things like this in person with people. And it's not even about so that I can assert my point of view. On the contrary, it's so that I can absorb other people's point of view. I'm more interested in absorbing other people's point of view about an issue so that I can better understand how people feel about things, rather than me just saying, this is what's right. And there it is. That's the end. And so I don't want to use and so what ends up happening, Peter, as I'm sure you know, is that you open up when you make a statement like that online, you open up a big can of worms where people are going back and forth, and a lot of negativity gets sown on your page. Comments start to fly in and out. People start throwing in their opinions. A lot of people aren't necessarily informed about the issue, maybe even you. And it becomes this big hotbed of engagement, which is great for social media. Social media loves it. They want you to put your uninformed opinions online. Please do, and share them with all your friends. Get into arguments with total strangers. And I do not want my social media to do that. I don't want my social media to feed that. For me personally, because I'm a person that is more interested in absorbing other people's point of view than asserting my own, I would rather not use social media for that, because it will become so energized into that river flows very hard and fast on social media. As you know, it's more safe to be boring. It really is.
It is shocking how comment sections bring the worst out in people.
I know.
So rapidly. I think a lot of it's because if you see a name in a comment section, it dehumanizes both sides. So it makes people feel like they can just scream the worst things at this username when they would never act that way in person. At least I don't think most people would.
Absolutely not. I think people are much braver ironically, less, they're more inclined to type something, when they've got a computer screen and they never have to face you, whether it is something negative to say about a singer, something that simple, which we get all the time, or a real comment about a political issue or a political figure, or maybe something that's going on in the world, anything. I think, but what ends up happening and aggravates me sometimes is that people are like, you're an artist. You need to take a stance on this or that issue now. You need to be very clear about where you stand on this or that issue, any issue. And the problem is, it's like, yeah, but artists, most of them, if they are, whether or not they have a stance on an issue, not everybody is an expert to the point that they can give a really informed point of view, and they get asked about it all the time. And they might say, like, well, I think this, my ideal is that, and I, maybe here's where I stand on it, but it's not like set in stone. And I feel like, because it's a conversation, it's a dialogue, but then it has a lot of that. And if you take a very hard stance on it by posting it online and pressing the red button, it becomes very like, this is my statement and that's it. There's no more to it.
And the trouble is, it also, that's who you become to most people online. Because that, like these charged subjects, they have the power to just take the front row almost no matter what you've done as an artist. It's like, if you come out with some controversial political statement, then people who have been fans of you as an opera singer for a while might just disassociate that part and be like, well, she said this thing that I totally disagree with, therefore I can't support her art anymore.
Can't support her. Yeah, I've had that even happen to me already. And I feel like I say very little and make very few direct statements about things online. I mean, there are things that I feel like are just plain logical points of view that I feel like nobody could possibly argue with that I might say. And then someone will be like, how could you say this? How could you think that? And I'm like, wait, what? Everybody thinks that, what I mean? The sky is blue. I promise it's blue. People are like, but it isn't. And so that it's like, it's like, what, you can't really say anything. It's like, so the question is, do you want to use your social media for that? And for some people, it's great. Like, actually, some people open up topics on their social media all the time just for fun, just to open up a topic because they want conversation on their social media pages, what they want their page to be. And they do it on purpose. They might say, hey guys, I want to throw this topic. Let's have this conversation. What do you think about this? Or here's what I think. What do you all think? And they invite conversation, and that's their social media platform. Larry does this. Larry Brownlee. We used to, I don't know if he still does it anymore, but on Facebook there for a while, whatever controversial topic of the day, whatever was the news story of the day, Larry would say like a basic statement of how he felt, and then he'd be like, "What do you guys think?" Engagement like crazy. Wonderful discussion, respectful discussion. And that's what Larry did on Facebook a lot.
I was going to say, I bet those where you're inviting it are much healthier, more reasonable discussions than just saying the statement without inviting conversation, because then people go on in the attack mode.
Bravo. Well said. I think that's exactly right. I think Larry went about it brilliantly because he was able to kind of listen to other people's points of view, which is what I enjoy doing. Listen to what people think without being too like, well, this is what I think. And, letting people vent and air and engage with one another, as fans of Larry, because they love Larry, And so it wasn't about Larry. It became about whatever that issue was. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's
definitely awesome. Let's shift gears. I'm interested to hear what some of your most memorable / fulfilling experiences have been as an opera singer.
Oh God, memorable and fulfilling. Everything's memorable and fulfilling. I love everything. Everything has some memory, even if it's a crappy memory. There's always something that comes back and you go, oh, I remember this. I mean, honestly, I've been very fortunate. I ever since I started, as a young artist, I've had incredibly wonderful people to work with. I have sung on wonderful stages. I've sung beautiful roles. I've gotten to record some albums, starting to record more of those, sing repertoire that I want. I think, can I tell you what my dream always was? And that I feel like I'm starting to get to a point where I'm living it. My dream was always sing French repertoire in France, Italian repertoire in Italy, German repertoire in Germany or German-speaking country. And that was always kind of one of the things that I wanted to be able to say that I had done. And doing French rep in France, which I've done, and doing Italian repertoire in Italy, and singing for those audiences. Anytime I do that, I have a little extra sense of gratitude. Because it's like, I feel very, especially because I'm American, because I'm not French or Italian. I'm American. I'm Hispanic American. I'm family's from Cuba. But I feel a special sense of thank you for letting me sing your repertoire to you, for you, when that happens. Yeah, I hope that answers your question somewhat.
That does. I mean, you've performed at Scala, haven't you?
Yes.
So what was your experience like at Scala? I hear I hear that can be one of the most daunting performances, especially for non-Italian singers.
Oh, yes. Actually, Italy in general is very daunting. I think Italian theaters, Italian audiences are particularly, even in the smaller theaters, are particularly knowledgeable about their repertoire. They've had an incredible history about performers of their repertoire. And by their repertoire, I mean, opera. Opera in general.
Literally opera, yeah.
And Italian composers, and their language and, things that they wrote, things that is their cultural identity. And so I think for a non-Italian singer to sing there and be taken seriously is something that we all dream of. And of course, is something that is a great honor. Of course, you need a lot of training, I think, to get to a point where it's acceptable, and generally the times that I have sung there, the best thing about it is that everybody knows the repertoire. Everybody in the orchestra knows all the words. Oh. And they're mouthing along. You can see the violinist mouthing along with Rigoletto. I mean, it's just, and they love it and they get it in a way that, yes, I'm sure other orchestras have this exact same sense of pride of their repertoire, but I have seen it more. It has touched me more, moved me more in Italy than anywhere else.
Yes. That's very cool. Do you find when you go to a gig in another country, do you often have the opportunity to give yourself some cushion on either side so you get to really travel? Because I know that's a big draw for opera singers. It's like you get to travel the world and sing, but you definitely, if you're like in the middle of a production, you're not really doing travel like you might imagine it,
No.
right? So I assume you have to bake in extra time that you don't have to be worrying about the rep or the performances or your voice or whatever. You can go have drinks on the beach, somewhere, and not worry about the Zitz Pro coming up. Do you
Yeah.
try to do that, and are you able to do that as someone who is often traveling and performing?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And I'll tell you the main thing, Peter. The number one thing is when you get very, very busy, thankfully, you might be going from gig to gig and you really don't have that extra time to spend those extra 3 or 4 days. That's the first thing, time. I'm lucky that I'm to a point where I don't actually have a lot of time and I literally have to like bake in the time, as you said, bake it in and make it happen, whether or not like, yes. And I'm happy to be at that point. There was a long time where I was not at that point. And when that happened, yes, I spent a lot more time playing, spending time like, I got to take an extra week and hang out in Paris and hang out wherever. But the other thing is that it's expensive. It's expensive. As you know, and this is something I've actually been quite outspoken about. I know we were talking about issues earlier. And one of the things I'm very outspoken about is that solo singers don't get paid to do anything but sing pretty much anywhere. You might get rehearsal money, but it's often roped into your performance money and you don't get it until the end of the engagement. So you could be there rehearsing for 3.5 weeks on your own dime or 6 weeks on your own dime. And you flew yourself in and you'll get a reimbursement later. And then you get sick and you miss a show, or you miss 2 shows, or you miss 3 shows. And if you're lucky, you sing some and then you wait and you get your money at the end. So who pays for that little vacation that you took at the beginning and the end? You do out of your pocket, which is why a lot of singers have to book themselves to death, because you're always waiting on your paycheck to come on your, and it's not easy to negotiate for higher fees. It's not easy to negotiate for rehearsal money. Some places pay it and pay it in a timely manner. Of course, every house is different. But for a long time there, it was like, I guess like a per diem was like looped into your overall fee that you would get at the end. In American companies, America, you actually get your money more on time than you do in Europe. In Europe, oftentimes you have to wait sometimes a month, sometimes more to get everything, and then you got to pay your agents out of that and you pay all your expenses out of that. And so it becomes expensive, Peter, to take time to enjoy all these great places that you get to go to. So what I try to do to combat that is to make time every day for work and every day for rest and relaxation and fun. And I really do. That's why I love running. One of the number one reasons I like to run is because it forces me to go outside and see the city, whether I like it or not, because I'm not just going to spend my time in the hotel room and in the theater and nowhere. And then it's dark and I haven't seen anything. You know what I'm saying? Like it's an excuse for me to get outside and get to know the town, get to see the park, get to see the river, get to see the ocean, whatever it is that's there, that's special. Running puts me there. And it's kind of part of, it's like I get a little extra tick off for that, So yeah, it depends. If you have the money to do it, if you have the time to do it, great. Try, but it's very hard to be a tourist. You can't really be a tourist when you're working.
No, you really can't. I feel like it would have to be after the shows are done, if you have a gap before your next big engagement, which if you're really busy, probably don't have much of a gap.
You may
before
not.
Your next engagement.
Yeah. Or you want to get home, or you need to spend that time, or you maybe just need to recover. You need to like rest your voice. And so you're like, I'm not going to go out and party. I'm not going to go sing karaoke. I have to rest my voice. I have another thing coming up, or I have music I have to practice. I have to work on it. I don't have time to play, everybody has to find that balance for themselves,
Yeah.
You could just work less.
You could just work. Well, I was about to ask, at this point in your career, when you're a very sought after singer, do you still feel like you need to say yes to things?
Yes.
So that your relationship with those companies doesn't get hurt? That was a big, because I know young singers feel that way. They're like, if they get any opportunity, they're like, yes, absolutely. I'll do anything. I'll sing something
Yes.
totally inappropriate for me. Just to get some
Yes.
morsel of money as well, especially young singers don't make hardly anything.
Mm-hmm.
But
Even famous singers don't make anything. The more famous, I think the more busy and booked and famous you get, the the expenses of your life go up. Because you have to start paying. You have your manager. Sometimes you have two managers. You might have a PR person. You might have a social media website person. You're going to have to start paying for your pictures to get done more frequently. You might have to start paying for nicer apartments because you're staying in a more a fancier, more expensive city than a smaller city with maybe a less expensive, less fancy opera house. So you might have to start paying for more. Everything gets more and more expensive. You fly more frequently. That costs money. Everything goes up. So there's that. The other issue is that the general pressure of the level that you're having to keep is higher because everything is broadcast. Everything's a new production. Everything is being put on a streaming. Everything is live. Everything is, and so everybody sees it. And so you can't just get away with a standard that's not excellent when you get to be a famous singer. And then there's pressure not to cancel. For famous singers who everybody's paying to go see and everybody's looking forward to this person, you can't just pull out because you don't feel good. I mean, you can, but then people are like, nah, nah, nah. People get very mad. People write to you. People post online. This person's sick. This person's losing their voice. This person didn't learn their music. This person's lazy. This person's whatever they want to make up, whatever narrative they've decided. And so then you have to make a statement and you have to explain to the whole entire world why you need to pull out of something. Why I'm very sorry. Like I got the flu in May. I'm telling you, it was like such a huge deal. It made such a big deal. Lisette Oropesa pulls out of performances over the flu. Like, yes, singer gets sick and pulls out of a performance. Man, dog bites man. I mean, it's literally that. Yes, I had to like make a statement. I felt obligated, and this is ridiculous, but I felt obligated to post a picture of my flu test. I did. I didn't have to.
That's wild.
It because I felt like I couldn't just say I'm sick. I'm sorry, I can't sing.
Especially as a singer. A singer who I can only assume you've been extremely reliable your entire career, or you wouldn't have had your big career. So it's amazing that something like this would come up. The flu, very serious, especially for a singer. Especially for a singer. It's not like you can just, drink a bunch of coffee and like get through the performance because your voice is going to be shot. It's different for a singer.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And when you're singing big parts, big roles, I mean, famous singers are singing bigger roles. There's more on you. Sometimes you don't even have a cover or somebody to go on for you. So the company is going to be like, please, you can't cancel. And if there's any way you can sing, if we can get you a shot, if we can get you to a doctor, you need to sing. Like the day of the dress rehearsal, I was with 102 fever. I was dying. And they were like, please, can you do the dress rehearsal? I was like, I cannot get out of bed. I'm very, very sorry. I felt so, and this is not the theater's fault. It's just the way that it is they have a schedule they have to keep. It's not all about you.
Business.
It's yes, the theater has to go on, the orchestra has to play, the chorus has to, like, they've got the show literally must go on. And so what happens is you're in this little merry-go-round and it's going to go on without you. But if you're an important horsey in the merry-go-round, they really, really, really need you to get your shit together. Excuse my language. They really, really, really need you to be well for this performance, please. And it becomes such a high pressure. And so singers become completely neurotic. They become completely neurotic.
So two things. One, cussing is perfectly allowed on this podcast. Okay. So cuss all you want, cuss like a sailor.
Okay.
And two, my next question was about that pressure getting bigger and bigger as your career gets bigger and bigger, because there are people more and more and more suffering from anxiety nowadays. Young singers, good God. It's anxiety is something I got hit with about 10 years ago. That's actually when I learned how to meditate. And that's when I got a handle on it. Meditation was my saving grace for like conquering anxiety. Amazing. Most people have not found that. Yeah, I'd be happy to dive into it. But so many young singers deal with it And I hear about people being just horribly nervous, like a week ahead of a show. I mean, just like crippling anxiety, like a week ahead of a show. And I'm like, if I felt like that, I would not be doing this career.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would be doing something. And a lot of people feel that way, which is shocking to me. So, what are some things you've done? What is some advice you have to young singers who might be feeling anxious about how to approach that part of their life, that aspect of their life as their careers get bigger? I mean, if it goes as they hope it goes, you know?
Thing is, I had anxiety about performance from even when I was a young singer, because actually young singers have a lot of pressure on them, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
For competitions, for an audition, because you got one chance to nail the audition on December 12th at 9 a.m. You're going to sing for these people, and that's when they're going to hear you. They're not going to reschedule. You don't get another shot,
Yeah.
and maybe you've put in all your, maybe you've saved up for 3 months from your other job that you have to get your plane ticket and your hotel to do this audition. So yes, the pressure is incredibly high for young singers. um, Famous singers have a similar, all singers, anybody really, have a similar thing. I think when you get more and more famous, like I said, because more people are depending on you to carry the show, because your name is a big thing attached to it, and so they get more pressure to go on even when they're not well. And I think this is actually really dangerous. um, the difference between a young singer and a famous singer in that is that the young singer probably isn't singing a big role in a big house. They might be singing a smaller part. It's not as big a deal if they cancel as it is for the person singing, I don't know, Macbeth or Traviata or whatever
Mm-hmm.
big part that they're doing. So the stakes shift, but they're still high in the context of that singer's life. Like I said, when I was a young singer, and even still, I sing every show like it's the most important show I've ever sung. Like it's the last show I'm ever going to sing. Like it might be. It might be the first time anybody's ever heard me. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to think that I'm terrible. I want them to think that I deserve to be there. And I used to sing like that. Even when I sang a teeny part, I would sing the exact same thing. I want you to think I deserve to be here. And I sing a big part. I want you to think I deserve to be here. So, but that is my fault, Peter. That's
Mm.
my mindset, which is not good. My mindset is this is the most important thing I've ever done. And so the pressure that I put on myself is high. Now, I've had singers, I can't tell you, I had the most hilarious conversation with a very famous tenor. I'm not gonna say who he is. It's not a negative thing. But he basically said to me, he's like, why are you so like stressed out? He's like, relax. It's gonna be great. Now, the context of what happened was I was singing a very important role in a very important house. And I was getting so much shit from the conductor, so much shit from the conductor. And I felt like I could not manage it. I was like trying to keep from having a heart attack and a breakdown after every single rehearsal.
Mm. Mm.
And this very famous tenor wasn't getting any shit from anybody. He was just doing whatever. He'd come to work, he'd do his thing, and then he'd leave, and everything was
Tenors.
fine. And he got zero notes, zero criticism, zero anything, just whatever. Yes, sir, whatever you want.
Mm.
And I was losing my mind because I felt like everything I did was being ripped apart. And he's like, what's that? He's patting me on the back. You're great. You're gonna be okay. You need to not stress so much. It's not that big of a deal. Focus on your family. Focus on the beautiful weather. Focus on being here. Focus on all these other good things. Don't focus on everything else. Don't focus on the negative. And I was like, I, but no, is this not a huge deal to you? Like, do you not care? Is this not the biggest deal? And it wasn't for him. Or he managed to have a better outlook, which was this is not
Hmm.
life and death. It's not
Yeah.
life and death. It's gonna be okay. Now, I had to learn from him because my tendency is maybe destructive to go into something like it's the most important thing I've ever done. Now, can that lead to success? Yes. Can that lead to failure? Yes.
Another
What
one
do you
of
do?
it's another one of the balances you have to strike, right? Because you want it to feel important, because for me, that certainly helps me kind of get in the zone and elevate my performance. But you also do need to be relaxed and trust that it will be okay. in the end. Like the
Yes.
world won't actually end. And the worst thing probably won't happen.
Yeah. I know.
But
I'm
again,
still working on it.
it's a really tough balance to strike, to be so jazzed because you want to perform like it's your last performance ever. It might be.
Mhm.
It might be, but you also, it's tough. It's another tough balance. Everything's a balance, isn't it? That's this whole conversation. Finding the
Yes.
balance and everything.
Well, and I think that if you, I don't know, the audience doesn't know how what you're going through. That's one thing I do try to tell singers sometimes. And usually it's in the context of don't make excuses. When we're in a don't make excuses dialogue with a singer, because singers can and do make excuses all the time for failures. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that, like, for example, if I don't sing well on, Thursday at 9 a.m., I'm going to justify it to myself by saying, well, it was Thursday, yesterday was Wednesday, and Wednesday is the hardest day of the week, and so it was Thursday 9 a.m., and I didn't really sleep that well last night, and the conductor was a jerk to me, and this dress doesn't fit me right, these shoes aren't comfortable, and I don't have the right shade of foundation, so you know what, I am not going to sing my best today. Very easy to do that, to justify
Mm-hmm.
every failure that you but and so when I'm having this conversation, whether it's me talking like that, which is all the time, or other singers talking like this, then I say to them, but the audience doesn't know, and the audience doesn't care. The audience
Okay.
doesn't know, and the audience doesn't care. If you had a fight with your colleague, if the conductor was giving you shit, if the corset's too tight, if blah, 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 they don't know. If you had a cold and the flu and 104 fever 2 days ago, they still expect you to sing like Maria Callas on her greatest day
Mm-hmm.
every time you open your mouth. And that's why the pressure, if you think of, at least if you assume that about the audience, because sometimes they do act like that. They do say things like that. They do post things like that. They share that with you. Well, I heard Sills and I heard Sutherland and I heard, and that
Yes.
is the
Yes.
standard that I expect to hear from every single singer at every moment. Then, of course, you're going to feel like every performance you give is the most important ever.
Mm-hmm.
But if I try to like let that go and say, you know what, and be more like this tenor who's like, just enjoy your family, enjoy the weather. It's not the end of the world. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal. Don't worry
There
about
is,
those people.
yeah, there is a nugget of truth from that tenor there, where it's just like, it is, if you get something I've been working on a lot, 2023, my main thing has been focusing on gratitude, actively working on gratitude. And it is a muscle that you have to flex. Like if you start getting anger about something, you just immediately pivot to something you can be grateful for. And there's always things to be grateful for. And and I'm still pretty awful at it when it comes to singing. Like if I have to step on stage with a really bad vocal day, it is tough to be grateful, because you're just like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to sound like shit. And the audience is going to think I'm shit. And I'm going to think I'm shit.
Mm-hmm.
But gratitude can be a very, very powerful tool for cutting through some of these things, because for most people, if you look at your life, there are always things to be truly grateful for.
Yeah,
I have found that useful. It's been something I've been working on a lot this year in particular.
that's great. That's great. That's beautiful and wonderful. And so it's going to help you so much, Peter. And I hope that you can pass on that messaging as much as you can to any person that you feel needs to hear that it's just, it's okay. That's essentially what the center was telling me. I thought he was being dismissive, but what he was trying to tell me to do was, and that's because I heard it wrong. What he was really saying was what you're saying, which is just be grateful for the important things. And if you do that, you won't have so much anxiety, because that's what this conversation was supposed to be about, right? Anxiety. And how do we deal with it? Ah!
Yeah. 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 It is interesting how it shifts, because you can put just as much pressure on yourself as a young singer with not as much to lose really as you can. You can put that pressure on yourself and make it equal to someone who naturally might feel the pressure of stepping on stage at the Met or something. You can do that to yourself
Oh,
as a
yes.
young singer. And you're right, it is here's your audition time. These people are going to know in the first 10 seconds if they want to hire you or not.
That's
And
right.
that is pressure there.
Yes.
That really is pressure. You just have to give it your best.
That's right. Well, and I think that one thing I do try to share with young singers is that when you feel like there's a reason to be nervous for anything, which there always is, try to fall back on your preparation, which is why discipline is so important. If you know that
Hmm.
you have practiced something 100 million times, you know your words, you know what you're saying, you know what you're meaning, you know what you're supposed to be thinking, all those things that you know you want to come put across, you can fall back on that, on your discipline and on your preparation. And that really helps combat nervousness. It's a lot harder to be nervous when you've practiced something enough. But when you're doing something that's like kind of new, and stuff, there's like, maybe you're not 100% secure on this or that, and it has potential to make you nervous, anxious, freaked out about something, then maybe you could next time prepare better so that that doesn't come up again for you, and a lot of times it's stuff that you don't have control over, which is what's scary. When it's like a note that you sometimes get and sometimes don't,
Mm.
a phrase that you sometimes nail and sometimes don't in one breath or whatever, all those things that you're like, crap, I hope I nail this. I do sometimes, but not always, then it's technical work that you need to keep going back to. And that's the work. That's the
Yeah.
job.
I will say, for me, it is my anxiety before performance is 100% based on preparation. 100%. I could be singing for my grandma in the living room, or I could be singing in front of Maestro Makatsuris at AVA. And the nerves will be what they'll be based on how well prepared I am. Period.
Yeah. Yes,
And
they
I
will.
hear about a lot of young singers, and maybe this is true at your level too. Maybe that will just cram last minute to learn something. And
They're
that
nuts.
just terrifies me. I'm like,
No,
give me a
I
few
need a
months,
year. Yeah.
give me a year, and I will have this role so well prepared. You won't believe it. You will never regret hiring me if you give me some time. Otherwise,
Yes.
I might do it. I might go on and put on a show, but I'll be nervous and I will not enjoy any of it. And it
Yes.
won't be as good, period.
No, I'm exactly the same. Actually, and that's another thing that starts to happen when you start getting very popular. Everybody wants you to debut a new part. Every
Um,
every offer I get now for a job is a new role. And I'm like, I'm looking at my manager. He's like, we need to accept this, right? We need to accept this. And it's like 6 new roles in a season. And I'm like, do you know how long it takes me to learn a new part?
mm,
I can't. Just the same way that you're saying, Peter, I cannot just cram it. Like it's not possible. That's my
mm,
nightmare come true of being pushed out to sing something I barely know. I would literally rather do anything. I would literally rather do anything else than
yeah.
that. That is the most scary, scary thing. Now, can I BS my way through stuff that I know I can make work because I have a certain skill set that can compensate for the majority of it? Yes. But that's hard. That's very
Mhm.
scary and very hard. You have to have a lot of experience to bank on. It's kind of like if I've run 25 marathons, could I run a marathon? I've never been to that place before. Probably because I run a
Mhm.
lot of marathons, but I'm still going to be like, oh, I don't know where the hills are. Where are the hills? Oh, you mean they're the whole time? Oh,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
that's kind of one of those things. Whereas I'd rather just say, you know what, I prepared one marathon and all it was hills, and I know how to run a hilly marathon. In
Mhm.
fact, I'm going to go out there and nail it. I'd rather do that. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Than bank on.
definitely. I mean, I am very much like whenever I'm studying a role, and I'm actually learning 2 new roles right now. I'm covering these 2 bass roles in the world premiere of Frankenstein at Arizona Opera, which is a really cool show, by the way. Very, very cool.
Wow.
Um, so I'm learning these 2 roles now. And for me, how it always goes is I study, 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 study. I'm a very, very disciplined person. And I'll be studying for a while and I'll be like, I don't know any of this. Like I haven't memorized a syllable. But then like at some point, it just all settles.
Yes.
That's how it works for
Yes.
me. But there has to be that time window in there. If it hasn't settled yet, I'll
Mhm.
just question every entrance, every note.
Oh,
Then all of a sudden it's like, dude, you know the role. You got it. But
yeah.
until that point, it's like you don't know anything.
You don't know anything.
Have you even studied this?
Yes. Yes. No, I learned the same way, but because I'm very similar, I'm also very disciplined practicer, and I believe in practice efficiency. I really, really, really do. I know there is practice that is going to help me, and there's practice that doesn't do a thing. And I know where I am in practice of when I can tell when I'm memorized and when I'm still not. And I'm very hard on myself about that. Like I will go keep going back to it because I don't want to show up and still be kind of learning it when we're trying to block it. That's a nightmare for me. I can't. I have to be off book. I have to be really ready to go. Otherwise I feel like, oh, like I'm never going to get it, you know, even though there are a lot of singers that do that. They show up to the rehearsals and they don't hardly know the part. And they're just, oh, learn it on my feet. I'm like, learn it on my feet as I'm learning to drive on the highway and you've never pulled out of a parking lot. Like I can't.
Oh,
So
no way. Absolutely no way. That was actually, I want to ask you about that, and then we'll move on to some fan questions, and then we'll wrap it up. We are.
I know
it's been zooming, but it's been a great chat.
It's my fault. I'm a chatty Cathy.
No, it's been a great conversation. That was my next question, was about what your practicing looks like these days. Because if you're singing all the time, that means you're going to be rehearsing a lot, which means you're probably going to be coaching a lot. Where do you fit in the practice time, and how do you structure it?
Okay, so generally, if it's a part I've never sung before, I try to start a little bit of preliminary work on the role 1 year in advance. If I've never sung the role, I have zero real context. I might have listened to the opera 1 or 2 times, but I like to look at the music and get a preliminary outlook a year out. And then I'll work on it for a few weeks and then put it away. And I do it on my own. I almost never work with a coach. Reason being, I don't want that poor coach to hear how slow I am at learning it and think that I'm not smart and think that I can't figure it out for myself. Like I really try to do the majority of the legwork on my own with my little tick, 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 whatever I have available to me. And I try to do brain work before I start singing it. So I don't necessarily practice by literally singing phrase by phrase repeatedly because that tires out my voice. So I would rather just speak the text, speak the rhythms, that kind of thing, which is super boring, and takes forever and it's tedious. And then when I get to a point where I feel like I've got the text going, then I'll write down the text. I will literally just sit there and write it. And if I know it's memorized, I know what's next. Because I'll memorize the melody really fast. I can actually memorize pretty quick. Text is what's a little bit harder, which is why I think learning the languages and speaking the languages as much as you can is extremely helpful, Peter, because you'll memorize twice as fast. You won't have to look up every other word. You'll know the diction. You won't have to ask somebody. And then I find where the problems are. Where are the problems? Where's the part that is going to be a problem? And then I go from there. So it takes me, anywhere from a year out to 4 months. 4 months out, I try to really start I'm only working on this consistently. 4 months.
Okay.
I'd say.
And
if possible.
And vocally, like vocal exercises, vocal training. Are there things in your voice that you're actively trying to improve?
Yeah.
And is that something you're working on like every day?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, no, I'm perfect. I open my mouth and everything's just perfect. I never have to practice. I never have to criticize my own singing. It's perfect. No, child. Oh my God. No, I tell you one thing that's funny. Every role you sing, and I'm sure this will happen to you as it happens the same way it happens to a soprano. Every role you sing leaves a little imprint on your instrument. And it could be a good one. And then when you go to sing something else, you're going to go, oh, evidence of the role I've just sung is here. Now I'm finding it, whether it's, wow, listen to how awesome and clean my passaggio is. Oh, listen how easy I can approach this one note. Listen how beautiful that vowel is now. Could be great things. Could also be a problem of, oh my God, why does my voice not want to sit low? Why is it always wanting to do this? Like, what is going on? And so every single role is going to have a little leftover, a little residue, and you have to work with that and clean it up or incorporate it if you can in a good way into whatever's next of your schedule. So that going from role to role to role to role, if they're really different, like I went from a high roll one time to a really low roll to a really high roll again. I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to die. This is very hard for me. I don't, you get used to things, you put them in your voice. That's the hardest bit. Really, that's the hardest bit. Now I'm trying to remember your original question about this all. Your original question was,
if you're going into do vocal exercises,
Right.
like a vocal training session. What does that look like?
That's what it's gonna be. That's
Okay.
where you're gonna find the flexibility that you either have lost a little bit of, or you've come, it's kind of like you're gonna realize you've been neglecting leg day for like a year.
No, don't do that. You will be sore for a month
Right.
the next time you barbell squat.
Right. And it's not because you're not fit. You're perfectly fit. In fact, your legs might look gorgeous, but
Hmm.
when you're going to be like, what the hell, my butt? And so that's
Yeah.
kind of very similar with the voice, because you really can't keep an even the voice, no roll is even. No roll is ever even. Every roll sits a little high, sits a little low, sits a little in the middle, never goes up, never goes down, or goes. It's always going to put you, because it is a routine. It's like doing literally a routine on a gymnastics floor. And that's all. Now, even if you vocalize to warm up, you do your warm up, whatever, you're going to do the warm up that's going to be appropriate for your routine at that time for what you're being paid to do. No gymnast is going to be doing every single event to a perfectly exactly even level, unless you're Simone Biles. I mean, and even that, she probably spends all day long in the gym, and sure she
Hmm.
has events that are stronger than others. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
life. So we have to do the same exact. This is why I think vocal technique, it's not even just about, can I use my voice to go up? Can I use my voice to go down? Yes. But I'm being paid to do a specific routine perfectly,
Hmm.
execute this routine. So yeah, that's where for me most of the voice practice is recovering from something I've just sung and putting it into the next thing I need to sing.
It is amazing how much more comfortable roles tend to feel by the end of the run of shows,
Mm-hmm.
assuming you've stayed vocally healthy and you're well
Yeah,
rested and hydrated and all these things. But definitely,
that's true.
you pick up a new role. I remember I picked up roles before, and I'm just like, none of this feels good. Like I remember I had to. So I'm a bass. I go by Bass-Baritone mostly for marketing bass, but there were three lower basses at AVA when I was there 2 years ago, and so instead of
Lower than
singing
you.
lower than me, so instead
Okay.
of singing Colline or Benoit, Alcindoro, and Bohème, I sang Chonard.
Uh-oh.
And that was, I still feel like that is very much, it's range wise, it's not that crazy, but it very much sits in like lyric baritone land. And I remember when I first started rehearsing that, I was like, this is just going to be a train wreck. This is just, it's going to go, but it's barely going to go. And lo and behold, I think on show number 4 or 5, I was like, I think I sound okay on this now. And
Oh,
then
good.
the runs are over, and maybe I'll never do it again. But it was just one of those things where when I picked it up, it did anything but fit like a glove. It was like square peg, round hole. And by
Yes.
the end of it, I was like, I can actually sing this role. It just took 6 weeks to get it in my voice.
Bingo. Yeah, if you think of your instrument, and a lot of people get into this mindset of talking about fa and voice
Hmm.
type, and you
Hmm.
say your voice is this type, and so you have to sing this way, and this is all you can do. But the problem is, no matter what your voice type is, Peter, roles, as you said, are going to sit maybe a little high, maybe a little low, and you're going to be cast to sing that. Maybe it's a little high for what's easy for
Yeah.
you, but that doesn't mean that it's not accessible.
Right.
But you have to the build your fitness up there in a way. Essentially, you have to build it. It's not saying that you can't. It's just not necessarily, you're not naturally sitting up there. Can you
It's,
build it? Of course, maybe, if it's
yeah.
within reason,
Yes.
you know. And I've had the
Exactly.
same issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure. No, I mean, exactly a year later, just a few months ago, I sang Don Giovanni, which really sits in probably a pretty similar place as Shonart, and it felt incredible. I was like,
Ah.
this is the role I was meant to sing.
Maybe
It's
because you'd had that experience of Shonard putting you there and knowing where you need, how you need to maneuver, that Giovanni felt
definitely
easier.
a year earlier, Dave Vianney would not have been what it was a few months ago. I will say
Mm-hmm.
that. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
quite proud of where it got to. But a year before, I think it would have been pretty much like a bass trying to sing an aria that's a little it's not the range, but it sits in a place that's
It's a
perfect for
tessitura.
baritones, and
Yes. It's a real thing. Tessitura is a real thing. People look
yes.
at extremes of a roll all the time. Well, how high does it go? Well, how low? Oh, it has
Mhm.
one B flat. Who cares if it has 10 B flats or no B? It has to do with where the roll sits the majority of the time. And if that part of your voice is not comfortable for you to be sitting all the time, coming in and out of it easily and beautifully without breaks, without having to make a lot of manufacturing, because I think that
Mhm.
happens a lot with men. Women have to deal with this too, but I think men have to deal with it much more. Is that if a roll sits where your breaks are,
Mhm.
you're always having to manufacture a way above it and a way in and out of it, it is can
Oh,
be an absolute misery fest for you. It's
yes.
so uncomfortable. Women hardly ever have to, we either, unless mezzos have to do with it, low voice. I think low voices deal with it a lot more than higher voices. It seems to me that
Mhm.
they're always navigating that passaggio, the break, the lower passaggio for women, the chest to head
Yeah.
break. For mezzos, it can be a freaking nightmare trying to
Mhm.
really to feel comfortable in that break. But
Definitely.
also, yeah, but just where's the tessitura? Where am I sitting all the time? In the break or above the break or below the
Mhm.
break? Where? And you have to know that before you accept something. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to do what you did, which is take 6 weeks to get it
Yeah.
going and feeling comfortable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move into some fan questions.
Oh my God.
Uh, I give so every time I have a guest on, I let my hey, do you know Patreon? Have you heard of Patreon?
Yeah, yeah. I have a guy that I follow. I have one person that
It's the
I
best.
give money to.
Amazing. It's the best thing in the world. And so I let the top like 4 or 5 tiers on my Patreon ask questions to the guests.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
So here's a few. This is from Lori. This is actually a very long statement, and there's some questions in here. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna read it in Lori's words.
Okay.
I was very interested in your Bel Canto Aria album and wondered how it was done. Also, I listened to a zarzuela on your YouTube channel, which is a favorite genre of mine, and I'm jealous that I shall not see your Spanish/French recital. Will you add videos from that recital to your channel?
Oh.
Finally, I am interested in your self-description as a musical athlete. We've already talked about this some, an area in which I think you and Mr. Barber are simpaticos. Very true. It would interest me if you can explore this idea and talk about its influence in your performance. So we covered the musical athlete part of that, but
Mhm.
yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about the process of putting out that Bel Canto Aria album.
Yeah. So when I had an opportunity to record an album, which was actually I have a contract to record 6 albums, 3 recital discs, and 3 opera discs. And one of the projects that I wanted to do as a recital disc was an aria album, but I knew I wanted it to be bel canto. But I also love singing in French. It's my favorite language to sing in. So I was like, how can I get both things that I want on the same album and nobody gets mad? And it's all like everybody gets what they want. And I was like, this is perfect. I'll just do Rossini and Donizetti in French. I looked for Bellini in French and there wasn't any that I could find. Apparently, there might be some extremely rare translations of some Bellini operas in French. But from what I understand, the Donizetti and the Rossini repertoire that's appropriate for me, there was enough to make an album there. So I was like, this is perfect. That's how that came into being. That was just a concept that I had that I thought was going to be a way to marry the two things that I like. And the thing with the solo disc, the Mozart album that I have of concert arias was not my idea. That was proposed to me by the ensemble. And that became my first solo disc. Even though I love Mozart more than life, I didn't select to do this album, but I picked the arias for it because I knew what I was capable. There are a lot of Mozart arias that are absolutely not, that I cannot sing, absolutely not. So I had to research that. But yeah, every album, I'm grateful that I've gotten to choose the rep. And for my third solo disc, it's Zarzuela arias. So
Amazing.
yeah, mix and match.
I
Yes.
have a question based on the on recording classical music.
Mm-hmm.
Do classical albums perform well? Do they perform well
No.
on streaming? And does the money ever get made back by whoever is fronting it for the recording sessions or hiring the orchestras? And because that's a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to make a good album.
It does take a lot of money. Do you want the answer that is based on my experience or the answer that's based on what I've heard about things? Because it's a mix, Peter. I think
Mm,
the first problem is finding, and it's always just a big stack of problems. First, you have to find somebody who's willing to pay for it,
mhm,
as you said. And a record company in general is not making all of their money on selling recital discs or selling classical discs, unless you are a highly marketable classical artist that has generally a huge record like repertoire already, like Cecilia Bartoli or Andrea Bocelli,
mm,
who sells a lot of classical records. So you
yeah.
can't necessarily bank on the new ingenue soprano or tenor or whatever being a big hit. So the record company takes a risk on this person, but they're not always going to be wanting to pay to make the orchestra, book everything and do it. So sometimes they will, and then you make, if you're lucky, they have to promote the disc. They have to put the disc in the hands of people, which is harder and harder to do. And then sometimes artists pay for it themselves. I know artists that have helped pay themselves money out of their pockets to record their own albums
Sure.
with big companies, with big record labels. It's not about, record labels have money, but they're very careful about where they put it. It's not that simple. So actually getting a record deal is extremely difficult
Hmm.
and not simple. And then selling the albums, there's a technique to that. I mean, you can't just wait for people to come knocking on the door to buy the album. You have to like advertise. You have to put the album in the visibility of the audience and the public that's going to buy it. You can't just like sell it at a gas station. You have to sell it at the theater. You have to sell it in festivals. You have to put it in front of people who are going to be interested, people who are already fans of this artist. So it's not an easy thing to do. Do they make money? Not much.
Hmm.
Certainly not what they did once. Maybe they made
Yeah.
more money several decades ago. They certainly don't anymore. So we have to be more innovative about
Yeah.
how we sell them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all that.
No problem.
Okay, this is from Jan Kite Stan in Australia. I would be interested to know if you encounter inequalities in conditions for female versus male leading roles. Is that a thing in the opera world as it is in, say, elite sports and senior management positions in some corporate roles? At least in my country, that's a thing, although through media exposure, it is decreasing. I may not be phrasing that well, so feel free to edit.
um, there are absolutely inequalities in this and every industry. I think the main issue with the inequality in our industry, Peter, is that there are far more leading roles written for men than leading roles written for women. It is a statistical fact that I actually looked up
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago, that of all the most performed operas, there tend to be more leading male parts to cast a soloist in a male singing part. But there are far more female singers in the industry than there are
Mm-hmm.
male singers. So what ends up happening is that we get this disbalance of women have to compete for far fewer parts. So they have to become much more demanding on what women just have to be harder, more compete more, literally compete more with the numbers. It's a
Mm-hmm.
numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
And men can get away with more because there are more parts and they aren't as many guys. So it's kind of like, I'm sure every choir had this problem. Anybody that ever sang in choir, there were a lot more
Mm-hmm.
girls trying out to be in choir than there were guys. And so all the guys got in, even if they weren't that good. And the
Yep.
girls had to be like perfect. And
Yep.
that's an inequality, but it's a statistical reality about our business. So, I mean, yeah, now are there inequalities as to like pay and stuff? Yeah, of course. What do you think this is?
Yeah.
What do you think this is? Do you think this is this business is and the problem also with that in this business is that nobody talks about the industry standards for anything, because there might be industry standards and then there are star privileges and certain
Mm.
privileges that people get that are just because that if you want that singer you got to pay this rate or that rate, and so there are a lot of inequalities. You might have a Violetta making a fraction of what you're paying the Germain pair to sing Traviata. I've been
That's
her
crazy.
a few times where I wasn't making as much as the baritone. And it's not because I wasn't a talented soprano, but it's just because that baritone is more famous. They demand more money. You want the baritone, even if it's to sing Germain Père. This is his fee. And so fees have like a hierarchy, and that's just performance fees. I mean, there are other things involved. There are managers that have certain pull that other managers don't have. There are people with record deals, people with Rolex involvement, people with God knows what. I'm sure that there are more things that happen and go on behind closed doors, conversations that I don't know about, that my manager has and that everybody's manager has. And none of it ever gets talked about in our business. A lot of it's very hush hush and secretive. Like I would never ask a singer how much they're being paid to sing something. Ever. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You just don't do it, because the times I've done it twice. Once was with a really close friend and he told me, and it broke my heart a little bit. And another time was with somebody that told me what they were being paid for something. And I also broke my heart, made me very angry. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop asking questions because I don't want to know the answer. I'm just going to focus on what I need to do and myself and what I know that I can handle and I can manage. And the inequalities are there. And I hate to say, I almost don't even know how to fight them to an extent.
Well, again, thank you for sharing. This is from Lydia Grindato, who is a third-year soprano at AVA, one of my dear friends, and she's wonderful and amazing and going to be a superstar.
Lydia
Grindato.
Grindato. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. She asks, what is your main source of inspiration?
Ooh, girl. Lydia. I don't know.
She's asking the deep question here.
That's a deep question. I need to think like that tenor. Right? What gets me up every day? I need to be like that tenor and say the important things in life, family and beautiful things and being grateful. I'm learning from you.
Gratitude.
Being grateful. I am grateful. I'm looking outside. I'm on vacation. I'm looking outside and I'm grateful more than anything to be here. And it's because of my job that I can be here. So yeah, I'm grateful.
Do you love performing?
Yeah, I do.
You have to, right? Performing. I mean, to be, for me, that's always been, I think probably for most people, that's where the juice is in this career. If it was all translating scores, I would not be an opera singer. But you do that, and then you get on stage really well prepared in a cool costume, and you're like, this is the shit. So cool. This keeps you coming back, right? Because it's so much work up front to do a run of shows. Fortunately, it seems like if you get to the major theaters, they'll do more shows. For example, in like an undergrad production, you'll do like one performance, and obviously the prep is it's all a different level. But
that's true.
Even if you do a run of 10 shows, that's still, there's so much more prep than there is performing. So, I mean, for me, it's just been like the performing part is so cool and so special, especially as an opera singer. It's unamplified. It's like a raw kind of thing. It's like a primal kind of thing almost. You're up there like really letting it rip. That's always been it for me. So
I think that's wonderful. I feel similar. For me, performance, you're so right. There's so much more prep, isn't there? It's all prep. And if you don't love the prep part and you only love the performance part, it's hard to really make this a career because you have to make friends with the prep. You have to find ways to love the prep and find it to where the prep is efficient. So you don't have to spend every waking hour in a library. But for some people, the prep is everything. I know people who love the research part and the preparation part. And I actually really do love the prep. I love the prep. In fact, I wish I had more time just to prep because the performance is very okay, this is the one time. This is it. Let's do it once, nonstop, perfect from beginning to end. Well, I wish, and what I love about performance is that it is organic and unfiltered. As you said, it's amplified. It's once and it's over. There's no way to
Mm-mm.
capture it.
Mm-mm.
That's it, and it's amazing, but it's like over too soon.
Yeah.
It's over too soon,
Yeah.
you know?
That I think
Yeah.
you're right that you need to at least be friends with the prep. At least be friends with
Yes.
it. I mean, for me, performing is I enjoy it much more than the prep, but the prep the prep is okay. It's okay, and especially if I'm excited about the role. Like I
Yeah,
actually like I enjoyed prepping Giovanni. Like I was
amazing.
I'd be reading recits and like laughing because they're just perfect. They're
It's
just incredible. So like
That's right.
I enjoyed that whole process, but I think it does take a certain role for me to really love it. Otherwise, it's
Hmm.
like I can. It's like enjoy parts of it, but
I know. Oh, can we get to the fun part?
yeah, we
But
get to the fun part. Yeah,
once you've done that prep for Giovanni, now you won't have to do that level of prep ever again. Like it's in.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so every time you prep it again will be less and less of the nitty gritty kind of like clunking things and memorizing and all that, you know.
Unless you get asked to do 6 new roles a year.
Do you know what Miss Oropesa said to that? She said, in your dreams,
Nah.
in your dreams. Where's my time off to learn all these? You know how hard these don't learn themselves. They
Yeah,
do
for
not learn
real.
themselves. Oh my God, I
No.
wish I could like download them into my neck, but I can't. It's not the Matrix. I do not know Kung Fu.
Not yet. All right, one more question. There were actually a bunch that came in, but
Oh,
I just wrote down a few. I pick and choose. This is from Holly Slinkard. So she asks, what is your vocal and mental prep before performances? We have already talked vocally, but I
yeah.
think mental, like day of performance, how do you get your head in the game?
I sleep as much as possible before. I have had to take in a new, stronger discipline about vocal rest before an exceedingly heavy schedule, which I'm finding more and more. I get fatigued, and I'm not able to turn over, a day-to-day kind of grind. So it's important that I sleep and rest my voice. I give myself 12 hours of vocal silence somewhere, a big strong chunk of 12 hours, and then and I try to have a normal day. I try to wake up and have an exercise. I try to wake up and have a decent meal, and I have to plan my meal to where it's not too close to the performance. It's like 3 hours before, but it's something that's slow digesting, but it will give me energy for later. I hydrate. I drink a lot of tea. I mean, it's kind of like, all the basic super boring singer things. Performance day is the most boring day until the performance. Then it's great. Before the performance, it's pretty like I'm not gonna go out and like do something really fun and exciting, and like go
Mm-hmm.
to the beach and run up and down the mountain, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like it'll
Yeah.
be calm,
You don't want to,
tranquil.
you don't want to switch gears too much on performance day because you're used to performing and singing with like your normal day. So you kind of want that to be the same on a performance day.
Yes.
But what about in the dressing room, like
Oh,
20 minutes till showtime? Are you getting
20
jacked up? Are
minutes.
you listening to dubstep?
No,
Are you meditating?
no, I'm probably fixing my lipstick. 20 minutes before, there's people
Or
coming in and out and talking to me and giving me notes, and I'm probably warming up and trying to make sure that my voice is sitting where it needs to sit. I'm probably rethinking about staging, if there's anything. I'm going over notes. I'm already by 20 minutes before, I'm no, literally, if I'm not fixing my lipstick, I'm already like in the thinking about the performance.
yeah.
I'm not dubstepping. I am not anywhere else other than there. I can't. I already 2 hours before. I'm already having to kind of be there. I can't shift over. I'm not going to play Sudoku and like no. I really have to already be ready.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I probably shouldn't do that. Stress myself out.
I'm just personally a big get, and I think this comes down to the security in knowing the part really well. I will never look over text or music before I go on stage. I won't run through words in my head. I will get amped up and get so excited about the performance and then go backstage and then get into character.
You don't look at text and music before you go on
Not
stage.
at all.
I do it even if I've sung the role 50 times.
Nope.
A little bit. Like I like to have the score. I need the score there so I can like touch it and like make sure that it's like what am I singing the right piece?
I
Or singing
definitely
Traviata? Yes.
I'll bring the music. I'll just in case there's a crisis, but I won't. I can't remember the last time I like looked at it last time.
Oh
It'll
God.
be like in my backpack just in case, but
Oh God. I go through all the hard parts. I sing all the hard phrases. Oh, absolutely. You should see me backstage for Gilda. I've sung Gilda 55 times. You should see me at least 55 times. You should see me backstage for Gilda singing all the hard parts before I go out to sing Gilda, like an idiot. I probably should not do that. I should probably do what you do and not sing anything and just go out there and just sing it because it's going to be fine because I've sung it a million times. Oh my God.
That's what I try. I mean, I try to trust myself. I try to trust the prep.
Bravo. That's very good. I don't trust anything. I do not
I
trust myself. I don't trust even the prep can betray you, Peter.
mm-hmm. Well, see, the
You
thing
get
is, if I'm what would cause me to panic is if I'm looking over something or running through something right before and I forget a word.
yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
Deviania.
What?
What is it? What is it? What is it? Then check the score. And then I'm panicking when I go on
Yeah.
stage, as opposed to like,
Oh.
let's go, Giovanni.
But
You
what if
know,
that happened on what if that happens on stage? Vieni alla stupenda.
so,
Like, what are you gonna do?
honestly, I'll trust myself to make up some Italian.
Oh, oh my God, that's like a nightmare for me. No, you know what? I think that's a great process. If it works for you, please don't screw it up. Don't let any of the anxiety monsters come by. Don't let them
No.
knock on the door. Don't let, that's good. That means that you're not a self-saboteur. That's
Hmm.
really good.
The only time I get anxious is probably if I'm in really bad voice, and I just worry about how it's sounding. I've never worried about getting through the role,
Mm.
like making it to the end of the show, but it's just like this is
Mm.
just gonna be dog shit. And I don't want it to
Mm.
be dog shit.
If I'm in bad voice or I'm not all the way 100% there, which I'm never happy with anything. Like I think I've been in like excellent voice 5 out of 10 performances of my, I would say of any 10.
That's what I hear. You cannot expect to be career days every day.
No,
Not gonna happen.
no, but you have to, yes, the scary and the hard part and the part that makes you strong is saying, okay, I'm not in great voice, so I know how to work around it because
Mm-hmm.
I rely on my technique. I
Mm-hmm.
know I can do this. I know I can cut this corner here. I know I can cut this off there. I know I can redo this there and not be mad at yourself because I dealt with that early on a lot, which was like I used to open my mouth and it was perfect every time, no matter what time of day it was. And then I got to a point where that was no longer true. That sounds really egotistical, but it's when you're younger, you just snap back faster. You just are more fresh all the time because you're younger. Put some miles on your voice and tell me if you're going to be fresh and perfect and gorgeous every single time you open your mouth. It's not going to happen anymore. You're going to have to start really warming up and
Mm-hmm.
really getting yourself lined up for every single part and and accepting where your voice is that day. Very hard to let go of the ego that makes you
Mm-hmm.
go, but I'm perfect. You're not perfect. You're not. So, but the audience doesn't know that.
No.
The audience doesn't know that. In fact, the more you can give them in the performance that is authentic, real, where you are in the moment, and the more like, what's the word? Honest
Mm-hmm.
you can be, that in the end will convince an audience member and bring them to your side more than your perfect singing of De Vieni alla Finestra. You can
Mm-hmm.
literally squawk De Vieni alla Finestra, but if you are the most believable Giovanni they've ever seen, they will not know that you sang the whole thing off key.
Mm-hmm.
They won't. Like
Absolutely
seriously.
true. Absolutely true. Well, this has been wonderful and expressing gratitude. Very grateful that you were willing to give up nearly 2 hours of your
Oh,
vacay
yes, that's okay.
to have this chat. So
That's
very
okay.
appreciative.
Thank you.
I think people will find a lot of value in it. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll be in touch about sharing and posting and stuff. Like I said,
Great.
anticipated somewhere 3rd or 4th week of October.
Okay.
The plan.
Thank you.
But
that sounds like fun.
We can connect on Instagram, and I'll tag you when I share and everything.
Okay, Peter, that sounds good. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it. And I'm very, I don't want to say proud of you, but I'm like, good job. Pat on the back for all of the success that you've had on social media and everything. I know it's not easy to do, and that's really, really awesome. I see your YouTube gold thing back there.
Yes, my silver play button.
Your silver play button. Woo. Well done.
That's where it's going for now. I just got my desk and chair, and I'll set it up over there. But I was like, oh, it's got to be in the interview. So there it is on the kitchen. There it is on the kitchen counter.
That's great. That's fantastic. Congrats. That's not easy, and that's amazing. So well done. That's really, really great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. You are a gem, and we will be in touch.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, take care. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.